Take a look at how Enoch explains the first heaven in his own words. "And they took me up onto their wings, and carried me up to the first heaven, and placed me on the clouds. And behold, they were moving. And there I perceived the air higher up, and higher still, I saw the ether. And they placed me on the first heaven. And they showed me a vast ocean, much bigger than the earthly ocean." Then Enoch goes on to explain seeing a mysterious group of figures known as the elders. Enoch also explains seeing 200 angels who govern the stars. Then Enoch describes the second heaven in a way that is eerily similar to hell, but for fallen angels known as the Watchers. Enoch explains seeing a darkness greater than any earthly darkness, and he's seen prisoners in the second heaven awaiting judgment. He asks an angel why they were imprisoned, and the angel said this, "I said to the men who were with me, 'Why are these ones being tormented unceasingly?' Those men answered me, 'These are those who turned away from the Lord, who did not obey the Lord's commandments, but of their own will plotted together and turned away with their prince and with those who are under restraint in the fifth heaven.'" I will explain the emphasis on the fifth heaven when I describe that particular level, because it's a big part of the story. The third heaven Enoch saw was a heaven full of paradise for the righteous. The righteous people will inherit this heaven for their good deeds. However, there is also another side of this heaven very similar to hell. Let me describe what this heaven will look like in more depth, and also fill you in on who the righteous people are. Enoch 2 verse 8 goes on to say, "And those men took me from there, and they brought me up to the third heaven, and set me down there. Then I looked downward, and I saw paradise. And that place is inconceivably pleasant. And I saw the trees in full flower, and their fruits were ripe and pleasant smelling, with every food in yield and giving off profusely a pleasant fragrance. And in the midst of them was the tree of life, at that place where the Lord takes a rest when he goes into paradise. And that tree is indescribable for pleasantness and fine fragrance, and more beautiful than any other created thing that exists. And from every direction it has an appearance which is good-looking and crimson, and with the form of fire. And it covers the whole of paradise. And it has something of every orchard tree and of every fruit. And its root is in paradise at the exit that leads to the earth. And paradise is in between the corruptible and the incorruptible. And two streams come forth, one a source of honey and milk, and a source which produces oil and wine. And it is divided into 4 parts, and they go around with a quiet movement. And they come out into the paradise of Edom, between the corruptible and the incorruptible. And from there they pass along and divide into 40 parts. And it proceeds in descent along the earth, and they have a revolution in their cycle, just like the other atmospheric elements. And there is no unfruitful tree there, and every tree is well-fruited, and every place is blessed. And there are 300 angels, very bright, who look after paradise, and with never-ceasing voice and pleasant singing, they worship the Lord every day and hour. And I said, "How very pleasant is this place?" And those men said to me, "This place, Enoch, has been prepared for the righteous." The righteous are described in verse 9 as being those who suffer every kind of calamity in their life, and who afflict their souls, and who avert their eyes from injustice, and who carry out righteous judgment, and who give bread to the hungry, and who cover the naked with clothing, and who lift up the fallen, and who help the injured and the orphans, and who walk without a defect before the face of the Lord, and who worship him only even for them. This place has been prepared as an eternal inheritance. Enoch was then taken to the northern region of this heaven, and he sees what he describes as a frightful place. This place is still located in the third heaven. However, on this side there is all kinds of torment going on. There is no light there, and Enoch emphasizes this mysterious black fire that blazes up. This is where I really made the connection to this potentially being hell. As Enoch is venturing through the northern region of the third heaven, he then notices a river of fire. And I couldn't help but to make the comparison to the Bible explaining hell to have a lake of fire. The angels told Enoch that this place is prepared for those who don't glorify God. More particularly, verse 10 goes more into depth with exactly who will be here. The people doomed to inhabit this realm are those who practice on the earth the sin, which is against nature, of witchcraft, enchantments, divinations, trafficking with demons, who boast about their evil deeds, stealing, lying, insulting, coveting, resentment, fornication, unaliving people, and who steal the souls of men secretly, seizing the poor by the throat, taking away their possessions, enriching themselves from the possessions of others, defrauding them, who, when they are able to provide sustenance, bring about the death of the hungry by starvation, and, when they are able to provide clothing, take away the last garment of the naked, who do not acknowledge their Creator, but bow down to idols which have no souls, which can neither see nor hear, vain gods, constructing images, and bowing down to vile things made by hands. For all these this place has been prepared as an eternal reward. Enoch is then taken to the fourth heaven. This is where the solar and lunar tracks are. I'll describe what this means in more detail. Verse 11 says, "And those men took me, and they carried me up to the fourth heaven. And they showed me there all the movements and sequences, and all the rays of solar and lunar light. And I measured their movements, and I compared their light. And I saw that the sun has a light 7 times greater than the moon. And I saw his circle and his wheels, on which he always goes, going past always like the wind, with quite marvelous speed. And his coming and his return give him no rest, day and night. And 4 great stars, each star having 1,000 stars under it, on the right-hand side of the sun's chariot, and 4 on the left-hand side, each one having 1,000 stars under it, altogether 8,000, going with the sun perpetually. And 150,000 angels accompany him in the daytime, and at night 1,000. And 100 angels go in front of the sun's chariot, 6-winged, in flaming fire. And the sun blazes up and sets the 100 angels on fire. The fifth heaven is where the watchers are. They are also known as the Grigori. They are described as looking like humans, yet giant in comparison. These are the angels that had children with human woman and made the Nephilim. If you're interested in that topic, check out the video I made on the Watchers linked here to understand these angels more. The sixth heaven has 7 groups of angels. They are described as being extremely bright beings that are even brighter than the sun. What these 7 groups of angels do is explained in 2 Enoch verse 19. These groups carry out and carefully study the movements of the stars and the revolution of the sun and the phases of the moon and the well-being of the cosmos. And when they see any evil activity, they put the commandments and instructions in order, and the sweet choral singing and every kind of glorious praise. These are the archangels who are over the angels. The 7th heaven was so frightening to Enoch that he literally was trembling with fear. In this heaven he seen the fiery armies of the archangels, the incorporeal forces, and the dominions, and the origins, and the authorities, the cherubim, and the seraphim, and the many-eyed thrones, regiments, and the shining autonym stations. Obviously, there may be some angels that you are not familiar with in this heaven. However, we can just picture how frightening this sight can be with all of God's most powerful angels in one heaven. At this point, the angels that Enoch described as 2 men left him, and Enoch fell to his face terrified. This is when God sent one of his glorious ones to guide Enoch through the final 3 heavens. This was no other than Archangel Gabriel. The 8th and 9th heavens are explained very briefly. 2 Enoch verse 21 says, "I saw the 8th heaven, which is called in the Hebrew language Muzaloth, the changer of the seasons, of dry and of wet, and the 12 zodiacs, which are above the 7th heaven. And I saw the 9th heaven, which in the Hebrew language is called Kukavim, where the heavenly houses of the 12 zodiacs are." Now this is the 10th and final heaven where God himself resides. Enoch describes God's face as looking like iron made in burning hot fire and brought out. God's face emits like a spark and is supremely awesome and supremely frightening, in Enoch's own words. However, his face is also indescribable according to the book of Enoch. There are also cherubim and seraphim armies singing in this heaven. Enoch was understandably frightened, so God ordered the archangel Michael to remove Enoch's earthly clothing and to anoint him with a spiritual oil that radiated with light. When he looked at himself, however, he realized that he was no different than the angels in heaven.